Welcome. In this module, we're going to take a look at a very important subject, and that is how we're going to develop the timeline for the security transformation program. And how long will it take to implement the security transformation program? So we look at a recommended timeline for the security transformation project. Now, in this slide, what we see is a very high-level breakup of what the security transformation timeline will look like. And let me just go over this. And this is present in your slides. If you cannot see this clearly, then please refer to your slide materials. Now, month one is really, and this could be shorter, it could be 15 days as well. If there's urgency in the project to get started, then you would restrict the planning activity, which is designated here for month one, and make it for 7 to 10 days, or let's say for 2 weeks. But in the planning phase, we set up the entire project and we kick off the project and we meet all the stakeholders and make them aware what we're going to do. After that, there are actually 5 phases which are broken up into 2 or 3 month blocks. So phase 1 is months 2 and 3. It's a 2-month period. Phase 2 is months 4 and 5. It's also a 2-month period. Months 6 to 7 is phase 3. And as you can see, phase 1, 2, and 3 are all based on 2 months duration. And then we have phase 4, which is 3 months approximately. And then finally, phase 5 is again a 2-month period. So what we have is, if you look at it as a whole, you have a planning month right in the beginning, and the remaining months are broken up into 5 phases. And those phases are either 2 or 3 months each. By default, they are 2 months, except for phase 4, which is of 3 months. And these timelines can vary based on the project. So it's not really a fixed, but a recommendation for the timeline. So let's have a look at month 1. What are we going to do in planning, in the planning phase? And the planning phase is very, very important. And the reason for that is that whatever we're going to plan is going to affect the later on execution. So we have to understand the organization and security issues. And the planning starts right after the approvals have been given for the project. So we need to understand the organization and the security issues. We need to develop the Information Security Management Committee, which is going to consist of 4 or 5 people, as we have seen, and is going to run the day-to-day operations. We need to identify stakeholders for the Information Security Steering Committee, which is going to review the project on a monthly basis. And we need to look at the entire set of assets. This is the time now that we're going to compile the entire set of assets, and that could be done in the form of an IT asset register, or it could be discussed in the ISMC 4 to 5 member committee at a very high level. And we've talked about the information security, minimum security baseline, which is looking at what is the obvious thing, what are the obvious things to do. So the obvious activities are hardening the servers, for example, the network devices, the workstations, the web portals, and the software. So those are obvious things, and whatever is in the data center, that's the obvious, and it forms what we call the minimum security baseline, because that's what we call a no-brainer. We have to harden these IT assets. And then you conduct the project kickoff and conduct awareness trainings and make the teams aware and give them a comfort level what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So months 2 to 3 is also a very, very important part, and it could take 2 months or it could take 3 months as well, because this is very important. And what we do here is the pilot phase. It's a test phase. So what you do is you pick up one IT asset each from everything that you have. So you would pick up maybe one Oracle instance, one Linux server, one Windows 10 workstation, one Cisco router, one switch of Juniper, for example. You pick up one asset of each type, and you perform a pilot and a test in a test environment. What we're going to do is implement the controls in a test environment, and this is the learning phase where the information technology team, the IT team, really gets to practice on what the controls are. And then the information security team validates the hardening, that it's actually been done, and we prime the IT and InfoSec teams for their roles and the activities. And you also conduct a vulnerability management pilot here. We're going to start the vulnerability management program, and we're going to conduct and improve the vulnerability management and the patching in each phase from the pilot phase and then subsequently in each phase. So this is another view of the timeline that we mentioned. We've already talked about the planning and phase 1, which is the pilot phase and the test phase. And then phase 2, 3, and 4 are really execution. So we have to break down, if you have 100 IT assets, you have to break down what you're going to harden in phase 2, what you're going to harden in phase 3, and what you're going to harden in phase 4. And the difference here is that this is no longer now going to be a test environment, but we're going to do this in the production environment. So now we have phase 2, and here we are now in months 4 to 5. We're going to be performing hardening of IT assets as per the minimum security baseline for phase 2. We're going to harden the assets, we're going to validate them, and move them to production environment. And similarly, we're going to do this for phase 3, which is now month 6 to 7. Harden the IT assets and move them to the production environment as well. Finally, we reach phase 4, which is going to be months 8 to 10. And here, the technical teams are going to continue the IT asset hardening in the phase 4. And however, we're going to now move our attention and focus towards the governance, policies, SOPs, change management process, incident management process, risk management process, internal audit process. We're going to build up all those governance mechanisms. I'm going to spend a good 3 months. And it makes sense to do it now because we have hardened all the IT assets and the vulnerability management has already been done. The foundation is already taken care of, and now the governance fits in nicely as a layer on top. So here in phase 4, we focus on the governance, and then phase 5 is the last stage, the last 2 months or sometimes 3 months. And if it's going to be 3 months, we could extend slightly over a year. And there's a reason, in fact, why we want to do this in a year, because normally projects, if they fit in a year, they can be managed, executed, and we can maintain the motivation. The moment a project enters 2 years, 1.5 years, 15 months, it starts to, there's a bit of, the resources that are injected start to reduce, and the motivation starts to reduce. And there's a fatigue, the investor fatigue or the owner fatigue or the management fatigue starts to set in. People start getting impatient. So it's always good to finish a project in a year. In phase 5, we're going to complete the stage 1 ISO 27001-2013 audit, which is related to the documentation and the processes. And then in stage 2 audit, we actually look at the entire implementation as well. So that's all that we have for this module. Thank you.